Hello everybody, this is the Retro Bear and welcome to another episode of a semi-regular series called Desert Island Games. If you haven't come across this particular show before, I speak to a fellow YouTuber or gaming personality and basically talk to them about their gaming history, as well as ask them about 6 of their favourite games of all time which they'd like to be stuck on a desert island with, one game which they'd like to take with them where perhaps they haven't given it enough go or didn't really get a chance to put enough time into it, or perhaps gave it an unfair treatment, and one game because, let's face it, with all that time on a paradise desert island, you need something really to sort of stick the needle in, and that would be one game that they absolutely hate. Now, this episode was recorded back in the end of July with a relative newcomer to YouTube, but a guy who's got a pretty decent collection, as it turns out, and this is Timewarp James, who's relatively new name to most of you out there, I expect. I spoke to James for probably nearly about 4 hours across the course of this particular day. We started very early in the morning and we just managed to finish in time before we had to shoot off and attend a Zoom meeting, so we're very pleased to get it into that particular day and get everything done at once. It's a really interesting conversation with somebody. We also go on a bit of a tangent. We talk about wrestling as well, which is a passion of ours, but also predominantly it's about the games and where James' experience came from. I've decided once again to leave the interview in full effect rather than sort of make any changes or any edits to it, because I think with these conversations that we have, there's a lot of good stuff is being said, and I don't want to leave anything out which people may find interesting. And James does go into a great amount of depth and his reasons why he sort of picks certain things, and quite interestingly enough, rather than me asking all the questions, he actually turns around and asks me a few questions as well. So this is the first episode. This will go up today, obviously if you're listening to it, and the second episode will follow probably within the next couple of days or so. Do hope you enjoy it. This is my Desert Island Games, and my guest this week is Timewarp James. Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Desert Island Games here on Retro Bear channel on YouTube. Thank you very much indeed for giving us your time once again today. And this is the third part in hopefully a long-running series where I speak to a member of the community, YouTube community, about their gaming history, some games that they like playing, some games they don't like playing, and some games they probably want to spend a bit more time getting involved with. The premise, if you've not heard it before, is I take a YouTuber and I bang them on a desert island all on their own with a computer system which will play any game from history, online or not online. But as being online, we'd also make sure that we ask them not to send a rescue message, because that sort of defeats the whole purpose of the actual program. Once that, we ask them to take 6 games with them. 6 games they absolutely love, favourites of theirs that they'll be happily sat on the desert island playing for the rest of their lives, or at least until they're picked up. We also ask them to take 1 game with them on top of that, which is a game that perhaps maybe have not spent enough time on, or a game that they started but never finished, or a game that they perhaps think needs a little bit more love than it would have got at the time. And also, because we like to make things a little bit more difficult here, we ask them to take 1 game with them that they absolutely hate, because why should they spend all their time on a nice secluded desert island with their feet up playing their favourite games when there should be a game in there that they don't particularly enjoy. Also along the way, I'll be talking to them about their gaming history, systems they played on, and anything else that comes up in conversation during the course of this broadcast. And I'm very pleased to say that as we're going through quite a long history of games and listing, hopefully we've got on here some games that we may not have seen previously. But without further ado, I'd very much like to bring in my guest for today, and a relative newcomer to YouTube, a gentleman whose channel I came across a few months ago, and a thoroughly nice chap he is as well. It is Timewarp James. Hi, James.
How's it going, Russ? Good to speak to you.
Good to speak to you as well. So how long have you been on YouTube then?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I've only been on for a few months. Well, in terms of making videos, it's been a few months. I started making videos during lockdown.
Right.
But in terms of watching UK scene, I've been watching since probably about 2015. Yeah, my brother, I've got a younger brother, and he used to show me some of the American sites. your metal Jesuses, some of those guys. And then around 2015, I kind of found I was looking at room tours, and I found a room tour by Retro Dave.
Oh yes, yeah.
I think it was his 2015 room tour. And then from Dave, I found some of the other sort of heavyweights, if you like, of the UK scene. Toot UK, Pete Snestastic, Cybersnake J, and quite a few others. So I've been watching pretty much ever since.
Oh right. So I mean, what inspired you then? Was it obviously what they were doing, or is it something you thought about doing previously? Or
do you mean what inspired me to actually put some content out myself?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, for the first year or two, I would just watch. I'm sure a lot of other people have been in this situation themselves. I would just watch videos, and I was consuming video after video, and it progressed to leaving comments, and sometimes having a little bit of back and forth. Tuber. And then I'd watch the videos about some of the sort of meetups, Blackpool and some of the play expos, and I thought it'd be a really good crack to go along to one of those and maybe have a beer with some of these lads. But at the same time, and I said this to someone in the last few days, it was starting to feel a little bit voyeuristic, because I was getting to know these lads. But they wouldn't have had a clue who I was. If I came up and said, "Oh, how's it going, Tootie? Let me buy you a beer." Who are you?
Well, he'd take that first off anyway. But I mean,
he'd take the beer from me,
he'd take the beer.
He'd question who I am. Yeah. So lockdown came along, and I mean, it felt like a little bit of a resurgence in the community, didn't it? A lot of people have sort of said that. And particularly sort of Dainster streams.
Yeah,
tuning into those.
I mean, they brought everybody together during that time, didn't they? Really?
Yeah, it really did. And I think what happened, Russ, actually, is Dainster started the Discord group, which I sort of tentatively joined because, once again, no one knows who I am. Maybe a few people would have known my name from the comments. But I jumped into the Discord group and got chatting with some of the boys, and then just out of nowhere, I thought, right, I'm going to put something out now. Time to sort of get my face out there, and whether it's one video or, I get the bug and start putting a lot of videos out.
Hello,
Ross. Oh, that's 10 minutes in, and we've got our first.
First technical difficulty. There we go.
Yeah.
So,
what did you hear from me? What was the last thing you got from me?
You're about sort of you obviously joined the Discord group, and then you were made the comments, and you thought, why not have a go yourself? So
yeah, that's pretty much how it's gone. Yeah, and now I've not been on for 2 or 3 weeks. Got a massive backlog of videos to watch. But I'll hopefully get back in the saddle and get another video out this week or next.
I don't think anybody's on top of videos at the moment, to be honest with you. It's I'm way behind as well. I thought I might catch up during these last couple of weeks, but no, afraid not anywhere near it.
You've had a bit of leave from work, have you not, as well?
Well, that's it. Yeah, but I've generally sort of spent a lot of that time sat on my backside. Which is what I was planning.
A controller in your hand, I hope, as well.
Occasionally, not as often as I would like, but no, it's been nice to do it, and I haven't done half the stuff I thought I would like to have done, but at the moment it was just something I wanted to do, so that's the important thing anyway. Recharge and then pick yourself back up again.
Often the way it goes, isn't it?
That's it. So, again, for anybody who's not come across your channel, because obviously what we'll do is we'll put a link in the description below so people can sort of go from here to you and see what you're doing. Just give us a brief overview of what you are doing on YouTube, James.
Well, that's a good question. I've got under 10 videos out at as things stand. My channel's it's really just when I fancy a chat. On goes the camera and I put something out. I mean, I'd love to have like a mission statement, like with the channel. There's like a particular, a particular collecting goal or something I'm trying to do.
That's a good, it's a good idea.
Really.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's good. I mean, but there isn't really anything like that with me. I've got quite a small collection. I like to keep the numbers low, with either high quality games or the games that I've got some nostalgia for. And by keeping the numbers low, it's I'm more likely to play some of these games as well. But that's just how it stands at the minute.
Yeah.
I've not been to I'm not a car booter. Although I did go to my first. Well, I've been to a car boot before, but I went a couple of weekends ago with the intention of finding games. That's my first time I've got up in the morning and gone to a car boot to look for games.
Yeah.
With a few grabs, which I'll save for a video. But I'm not a car booter. I really do enjoy watching the guys that do the car boots and do the CEX thing.
That's what got me. That's what got me started. That was watching people doing car boots.
Well,
and I thought, I think I could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's something about a lad or a lady, who can sort of point to a shelf and say, "Look, this is all stuff I've found out in the wild," and done the CEX thing and that. Whereas me, I'm more of an eBayer. It's just a point and click and pops through the letterbox.
But then again, that works for some people, and other people it doesn't. I mean, from my point of view, I'm more inclined to, sort of want to go outside and I enjoy the dirge of trudging up and down the high streets looking for stuff. That's what I sort of do. eBay's all right, but
yeah,
I think not for me really.
I think it's the hunt, isn't it? When you're out in the wild or you're at a car boot,
the thrill of the chase.
Exactly. But with me, I suppose if you are keeping your numbers low, I mean, for a typical collection of mine, I've got no more than 10 or 20 games. I can possibly afford, to spend that little bit more money on eBay to get a game in the condition I want. So yeah, that's what I like about YouTube. Everyone does something different. But in terms of my channel, it's been I think it's been around 10 videos now. Could say I'm finding my feet and finding what what my niche is going to be. But I think I just like getting a bit of content out and interacting with people, getting my face out there, and that's really all there is to it for me. As things stand.
Well, we wish you the very best, mate, and hopefully that you carry on putting content out. And I think you approach it the right way as well, which is to find out what works for you best. And I think it takes a lot of time to find out whether you have to throw a lot of mud at the wall and just see what sticks. And yeah, we do wish you the best, and obviously those who are going to listen to you today hopefully will go across your channel and have a look, and then hopefully leave you some comments and pop you some subscriptions as well, which is always good to see. And if we can try and do that for you, then that's certainly an achievement here. And obviously this conversation today will give people a real sort of insight into the sort of gamer you are as well. So hopefully what to expect possibly in the future, we'll have to see, won't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll kick this off with sort of your gaming history. That's a bit about you. So that's what you do. That's what you've done on YouTube. That's what you're about. Let's now talk about how you've sort of got to this stage. And like a lot of people I've spoken to, not just on the Desert Island Games, but also through the podcast and indeed through interactions on YouTube, you started off in sort of the 8-bit era with an absolute classic.
I did. So we're talking the mighty Sega Master System now, Russ.
Well, you mentioned one before that, didn't you? I think there was the Spectrum.
Yeah, I started with the ZX Spectrum.
Which one was that one?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what the confusion there is. I think when I sort of sit with my console list, I can't actually remember between them which of the two came first. Which is it's a bit blurry. I was around 7 or 8 years old. My older cousin had a Spectrum, and me and him used to spend a lot of time together. He was a year older than me, so he sort of got things before I did. He had both the Spectrum and the Master System. So at some point, I've been around his house, played them both, and been lucky enough to get my own. But yeah, let's say probably the Spectrum was first. So let's stick with that.
Have you many memories of that sort of things you would have played, or something that sort of when you first start? Yeah, because obviously when your first gaming memory sort of kicks in, it's sort of there's something that sort of, not say snaps inside or sort of break, but sort of resonates inside. I think, oh yeah, I really like doing this. So would that have been from the Spectrum, and would there have been a certain point in time?
Well, I think the first game I ever remember playing actually was before the Spectrum, and it was in primary school. It was a game called Granny's Garden. I take it you're familiar with that.
Oh yeah, I'll let go on. I'll let you talk about it because I'll add a little bit to afterwards. Go on, yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I always remembered playing that game, and it was perhaps year 2 of primary school, and I vividly remember playing that game and being huddled around a computer, waiting for my go, and it was the first exposure I'd had to anything like that, and it was brilliant. It was just magic, and I was just gripped. So I always had the memory of that game, but it was only in the last year or so that I sort of inquired into what was that I played, what system did I play that game on? And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a BBC Micro.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So I know next to nothing about the BBC Micro, but yeah, I did, because I'd asked around, and there was a period of time where I was Googling Granny's Garden and nothing was coming up.
I expect I got some rather interesting images if you did that. That's what I expect.
Yeah, not quite the results I was looking for. Speaking of a bit niche.
Yes.
But there seemed to be like a black hole for information about what this game was that I played. It was really strange. That was a few years ago, but since then I've spoken to a couple of people and what system was this game on, and I have actually now found some bits and pieces online about it. So that was the first. So before I talk about the Spectrum, you were going to say a bit about Granny's Garden.
Yeah, because I mean, I was like you. I discovered that. I mean, my parents were teachers, so my dad always used to bring home during the summer one of the BBC computers. So we'd have access to that during the summertime.
Oh, you lucky boy!
Yeah, with the fact that all they brought home was educational software, you couldn't actually get any proper games for it. But Granny's Garden was one of those that I remember playing. And like you, it was like years later, trying to find out some information about it. I was obviously convinced I was the only person in the world who remembered it, because now a lot of people do remember that game. But yeah, I mean, my sister used to love playing. My sister's never into games at all. But that's when I first discovered that game. So the fact you mentioned it there, and somebody else has played it at the same time I would have done. Because I'd have been the same age, primary school probably. But yeah, that's what I used to occupy my summers with. Not playing Granny's Garden constantly. There were other games as well. The one I played was Mallory Manor.
Right, that name doesn't ring a bell. I mean, so was Granny's Garden an educational game then? Russ?
Yeah, it was. It was because obviously you had like things like the dragons and which paths to take and the colours to coordinate and basic problem solving. So it was I think, an educational software title at heart. So that'll probably shock you that you have actually played an educational software title at some point.
Oh well, yeah, it's a funny one. I don't recall. I obviously don't recall it in quite the same detail you do. I just remember the game and which involved, and was there some apples?
Yes, you're right, and a house and dragons, and all the usual stuff you get in, you take for granted.
Very blurry memory of any of the education. It shows you where my head was at in year 2 of primary school.
So obviously that was your first game, remember? So when you moved on to the Spectrum, was anything that was there that sort of grabbed you at the same time, or?
Yeah, as I say, my older cousin had a Spectrum, and we used to play Barbarian on there.
Barbarian, God.
Yeah, real classic games on the.
But it was. I mean, it was. Yes, I think maybe I remember Barbarian 2 a bit more than the original one.
I'm just it's just ringing a bell now. Was it on one of your podcasts that you were talking about who was on the cover of Barbarian? Yeah, Barbarian 2.
Maria Whittaker.
It was. I was listening to that and nodding along because I've still got my original case for that, and it's also the Wolfman from Gladiators, isn't it?
Yes, I think you're right on that one. Yes, there was a cheat code. You could type something in and it would make a bra disappear or something.
Oh, no, I wish I'd known about that back in the day.
I mean, obviously, it was an 8-bit computer with sort of 8-bit graphics, so I don't think you'd have... Yeah, no, but there was a rumour going around. I don't know whether it was true or not, I don't know. I didn't have a Commodore 64 at the time anyway. I'm pretty sure I've got a copy of Barbarian though somewhere. I'm pretty sure I have.
Yeah, real nostalgic sort of childhood title, Barbarian. Yeah, that's one of my other favourite games, which I think is a bit of a hidden gem on the spectrum, is Frankenstein Junior. And I think there's another one in the series called Bride of Frankenstein.
I've heard of Frankenstein Junior, but I've never played it.
Yeah, it's balls hard, and I've never completed it, but it was quite addictive, and it was just quite a charming little game where you're. I mean, we know how the sort of layout Spectrum games. It's remembering where you've gone half the time, isn't it? That sort of, you can go left, right, up, down, and it's a bit of a maze-like sort of map.
Mm.
And you're digging up body parts, and you're trying to recreate the monster, and it's a bit of a hidden gem, I think.
Of course, what you got to remember back in those days, of course, was that people used to map games out by hand, and then they would send them into the magazines.
Yes, I'm not too familiar with what you could do on the Spectrum, because I never really ventured past sort of loading up a game and playing it. But yeah, there was quite. You could buy software for it, couldn't you? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. All I remember was seeing in my friend's computer magazine all these great, wonderfully constructed maps. People used to sit there and draw, so they send them into the magazines and they post them as a cheat. So then you sort of get hold of the magazine, you'd follow the map through, so you could actually map, track your way to the game without having to go back and forth, back one way for this way, back one way for that way. You couldn't do that now. That art has gone. I urge anybody who's never actually seen one of these, Zap64 or Crash or whatever magazine for Spectrum, to go on the internet and have a look at some of the PDF copies out there and look at some of the stuff people put together. Spent hours doing those things.
Yeah, I should do that myself. I should definitely do that myself. I was aware that there was some sort of coding you could do as a user for the Spectrum, but as I say, never ventured past loading up a game. And
that was
I suppose speaking of the loading process, that is a big part of the Spectrum as well, isn't it?
Well, it is. I had got my 128 +2 out a few weeks ago, and you forget what a bit of a chore it is. Loading a game up, especially the fact that the game I loaded first of all didn't work, so you got to start all over again. And I did the same with testing the Commodore 64 as well, and exactly the same sort of thing. You sort of sit there waiting for a game to load 10, 15 minutes, and you've got time to go make a cup of tea and come back upstairs, and it's still waiting to load. I think,
I can remember a lot of time when my cousin and myself would play the Spectrum, we'd set a game loading and getting that screechy sort of 90s modem noise, aren't you? And then we'd go and play the Master System for 20 minutes while we sort of waited for our game to load. It's I've got almost as it's and some of the daft things we used to do to pass the time. We'd sort of sit there singing silly songs and messing. We're only sort of 7 or 8 years old and really mucking about because some of these games just took a long time to load, and I've actually got as many memories of waiting for a game to load and what we did to pass the time, as I have of actually playing the games.
But again, that's the joy of it.
It really is, and I'm lucky enough actually to still have my original Spectrum.
Oh, fantastic!
I've still got it. Yeah, it's lived in the loft for all these years. It's been up there 30 years, covered in sellotape. But as you say, it's the magic. I can get that down, and I've got the original box. And it just to look at it and take it out of the box just brings back all this nostalgia, and that's what it's all about, isn't it?
That's right. And just touching again on loading times, if you ever got a game that was a multi-load, I mean, that would, especially if you sort of died halfway through it, you have to rewind, go back to where you were, started again.
Was that where you'd have to pop the cassette out and turn it over?
Well, the only time I've sort of encountered this myself was on the Commodore 64, so I'm only speaking from that experience. But I know there was one game where you sort of loaded the entire first side of the tape. Then you got a loading screen. Then it said turn the tape over, and then you'd have to load each level in as you went along.
Got you.
And I think one of hopefully my memory isn't too hazy. One of those games was The Running Man, which is a terrible game anyway. By which point that you waited so long for the bloody thing to load that by the time you played the first level, which is horrible, that you don't want to go any further. And if you do go any further, I think at some point I'm gonna have to rewind this and start again. And that was it. Yeah,
that's brilliant. So you sit there for all that, and then you sort of play the game. And you think, why did I bother?
Yeah, so you could understand why some people nowadays prefer to run these things a bit more computerized, and which you can do, and it takes a lot much more quick. It takes that element of not loading out the equation altogether.
It does, but have we gone too far the other way now, no, Russ?
Yeah, we have.
I've heard guys talk about they've gone fully digital because it means that they don't have to get up and pop a disc in a tray.
I know.
Makes me laugh.
I've always been a firm believer, James, that if you play a game as it should do, emulation is fine and digital is fine if you've got no other way of doing it, but the original kit is still the best way to do it.
I think I'm definitely with you there. I have got digital games, I've got a digital library, but where possible, I'm still into buying physical. But I mean, you've talked about the Commodore 64. I can't help you there. I've never played a Commodore 64. I just wanted to throw that in there. I've never played a Commodore 64, and it's driving me nuts.
Well,
one of these days, I'm going to have to have a little dabble with that system.
Yeah, well, it's the only computer system that I played on before I got a computer of my own in my mid-teens. All my friends had Commodore 64. Very few people had Spectrums, but that was what I was sort of playing a lot of my. Did you
find that more people had the Commodore 64 than the Spectrum then, amongst your sort of friend base?
Yes, I would have thought so. I think I know he's my best mate at the time. He had a 64. His sister had a Spectrum. Occasionally played on that. I knew one other guy with a Spectrum. Most of the people had Commodore 64s, and it was the same when we moved on to the 16-bit era, when people had STs and Amigas, and most people had STs to start with, and within sort of 12 months, they'd all switch to Amigas. So I think it just follows the pattern sometimes.
Yeah, it really does. It's the same with like the Master System, which I'm sure will. Not for me to segue onto, but yeah.
No, it's a perfect point. If you mentioned it, obviously you were playing on that while you waited for the Spectrum games to load, and you did mention it about 20 minutes ago when we first started talking about it. So
subconsciously, am I trying to force the chat to a Master System? Because
I have a lot of time for the Master System.
Yes, you do. You're a Master System man as opposed to a NES man, aren't you?
Absolutely. So go on then. So that was what you saw. Your next sort of port of call was.
It was. So I had first exposure to that around a mate's house for a birthday party, and he had the Mark I Master System, and my cousin.
There's only one version of the Master System that you need to have for that one.
It's funny because at the time, as I say, my cousin had the Master System as well, and he had the Mark II. And at the time, I remember playing my mate's Mark I and thinking, like this. I think I preferred the Mark II. It's round and it's a bit sleek, and I thought that the Mark I looked a little bit sort of old. Even then, I thought it looked a bit old school and a bit naff. But I'm completely with you now. I mean, if I can get one of my sort of grail items, if you like, is a really nice boxed Mark I Master System.
That would be nice to own.
It really would. It's a bit of a grail item for me, probably in one of my more sort of achievable ones, but grail item nonetheless. But at the time, I remember much preferring the Mark II, not understanding that it's actually really a sort of essentially a downgraded bit of hardware, isn't it, with the connection and whatever. Yeah.
Well, this is it again. It's something that we've discussed on the TMB podcast about the fact that both the Master System and the Mega Drive received sort of downgraded, sleeker versions later on in their life, which just aren't the same sort of thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Master System itself, the original one, isn't the most aesthetically pleasing thing on the eye. But I think that's what's appealing to it, 'cause it looks like nothing else that you've ever seen before.
I agree. It's got it's almost got a bit of a contrived look, hasn't it? A lot of it, the features and some of the detail on it just is totally unnecessary, but as you say, it just adds to the appeal of the hardware for me.
And of course, there's two things on the original one as well. You've got the card slot in there, which again, people tend to sort of forget the fact that there were some Master System games that came on cards.
Yes.
And also, it's got the port for the socket for the 3D glasses as well.
Yes.
Which the new model doesn't have. The same with the Mega Drive 2 does not have the stereo headphone socket that the Mega Drive 1 has.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and it doesn't look as nice either. But yeah, we
no, I
digress
agree.
on that, yeah.
I'm with you on that one as well. Definitely more of a fan of the original Mark One Mega Drive as well as the Master System.
So,
yeah.
So what Master System game memories do you have from there?
So yeah, Master System obviously goes without saying your Sonic 1 and 2. I don't think I played a Sonic game beyond the first two, but they were two of the biggies.
Yeah, don't. My opinion, don't. And unless it's a specific one from sort of the later years, stick with 1 and 2. I think those are probably the best ones in the series.
Good to know I've not missed out. But yeah, you know, I'm nostalgia for both of those. I prefer the Sonic 1 and 2. I prefer the Master System versions of Sonic to the Mega Drive. No, they're different games, aren't they?
That's right. Right.
And whether it's the nostalgia or the thing with Sonic for me is that I always think when I look at Sonic that it's a game that you're supposed to play at speed and kind of, try and speed run the levels. But I don't play it like that. I play it a bit more sort of probably because I can't. Not good enough to play it that quick. Because Game Zone Birdroom did his competition, didn't he?
Yes.
And I was watching people have a go at that, and I thought, well, I would be hopeless at this because I'm quite slow and methodical with Sonic, and I think it lends itself playing it that way to the Master System versions.
I think you can play at speed on certain levels on it. I think I can happily do the first level on Sonic at speed, but when I get to the second level, no. There's too much stopping that you've got to stop and wait for things, and you can't do it.
I know what you mean. I wonder if it's because I'm so used to. There's probably been countless times when I've just played the first level of Sonic and switched it off. So I'm really familiar with the level, so I can blitz my way through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, big fan of those games, but I do play them a little bit slower and more methodical. It had Alex Kidd Miracle World built into the machine. So I played a lot of that as well.
That although I think I think people say it's the rarer version of the built-in Master System one than the Sonic one is. Not drastic, because I've got one with the same. I've got obviously original Master System one. I've got a Master System 2 as a backup, and I've got Alex Kidd built into that, and I was told that. Oh, well, keep hold of that because the ones with Sonic on are quite common. But the ones with Alex Kidd are rare, but they're not that rare.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. So couldn't quite understand. But yeah, so if you got one with Alex Kidd built in, keep hold of it.
I don't think I think, everyone that I knew that had one all had Alex Kidd built in. It's only been the last 5 years or so when I've started to sort of buy retro consoles and get into the hobby that I've discovered that there were variations to that. So I take it you've got because one of the common ones for the Mark One, correct me if I'm wrong, is Safari and something else.
Yeah, Safari Hunt and Hang On.
And that's it. Yeah,
that's the one I've got. I'm not sure there's another one. Yeah. Oh right, okay. There's another one on there called Snail as well.
Okay, did that get a separate release as well, or was that just like an exclusive?
It's Snail was something which is on there. I don't know enough about it to sort of elaborate on that, but I think anybody will know the Master System that I'm talking about. It was like a maze game, but it's like a very, very sort of brief thing that's put on there as an add-on. So it's like literally one maze and that's it sort of thing.
Oh wow! That's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's sort of like you used to get little games that used to come on loading screens, and it's sort of that sort of thing. If you were doing it like that, I'm just trying to think of one you may have heard of, but
that sounds interesting.
Have a look. Google. Use Google. That's what it's there for.
I was going to say I'll have a little YouTube of that later because I've literally never heard of that before.
All right, I hadn't heard it till about a few years ago. I must be honest with you, but yeah,
stuff.
Okay, so so Alex Kidd as well.
Alex, big fan of that. Yeah, I mean, I've actually bought back a lot of my favourites since I've been sort of collecting the last few years. So big on Shadow Dancer as well. I like the Master System version of that.
That's a tough old game.
It is a tough game. I think. Let me just have a look at the back. It's only 4 rounds on that, but yeah, it is a toughie. Never managed to complete that. But it's. I think I've not played much of the Mega Drive version of Shadow Dancer, but I think the Master System version's a little bit closer to the arcade.
I think it's a bit easier. Well, it's a bit easier. I think it's less brutal than the Mega Drive version. I only played the Amiga version, so vague memories of that being quite difficult.
Yeah, I mean they are tough, aren't they? All the sort of Shinobi series are. Well, they are for me. I'll speak for myself. I find them quite tough.
Well, a friend of mine worked his all the way through Shinobi on the Master System, and then when he got to the end of the game, he, having battled his way through it, he got a very, we sort of say, nondescript end of game message, which he said was not worth the time and effort he's spent in to try and complete the game.
Oh, that's a shame.
But I won't spoil it for you if you've not got that far, because I haven't either. So
yeah, that's definitely a game toughie, but really do enjoy it. That would be easily a top 5 Master System game for me. Castle of Illusion. A lot of these games that I'm going to say I actually prefer on the Master System than the Mega Drive.
Yeah,
and I will admit that it could just be nostalgia purposes, or perhaps I haven't dipped heavily into the Mega Drive versions of them. Castle of Illusion is like a good example of that.
Yes.
I'm not sure if there's an Asterix game on the Mega Drive, but the original Asterix game on the MS is
I believe there is an Asterix game because I saw one on eBay last night.
Oh, okay.
It's got the same cover as the Master System.
Oh, is it really? I wonder if it's the same game.
I would have thought so, because they probably released it simultaneously across both. So
yeah,
I think there were 2 Master System Asterix games, weren't there? I think.
Yes, there was. I've not played the second one. Really, really did like the first one. It was a game that I don't think either me or my cousin owned, but we used to have a rental van come around his area.
A van?
We did have a rental van, yeah, during this era, if you like, games. So I would stay at his house quite regularly. We'd have sleepovers. Because although we only live 5 minutes walking distance apart, this particular rental van wouldn't come round my way. It was only really round his. Kind of more kids in his little neighbourhood. So, yeah, used to spend a lot of time around his house. And this rental van would come round once a week. I can't remember what van it was. It just a little, like a little Berlingo van or whatever it would have been back in the day. Yeah. Little red van. The business was called Circles. The kids. It was like an ice cream van coming around, but he'd open the back doors. There'd be a queue of kids, and we'd take turns. And we'd come in and we'd select a game, and it was all handwritten in a ledger.
Yeah. And
you take it home and you play it, and then next week he comes back and you swap it out for something else. But
that's I've never heard of that before. That's brilliant.
It's one of my sort of fondest memories of this sort of time in my life. Actually, that van coming round, and we just got to play so many games because obviously between us we didn't have. It's funny when I see people's Master System collections now. Like my mate will, send me my mate who's not on the tubes will send me a picture of his Master System shelf, and he's got 30 or 40 games on there. And I say to him, like, I never knew anyone with that many games, even back in the day when it was when it was a lot of people's primary console. I mean, they were expensive, and we were kids. We weren't working. We'd go out and throw loads of money at them, could we?
No, that's right. I mean, that's why they were budget ranges for that's just that purpose. Towards the end of sort of the 8-bit life and into the 16-bit life, there were budget ranges there. So you'd have games that were a couple of £3. Obviously, when consoles came out, it was completely different. So this sounds like the absolute ideal opportunity to do it. We had a couple of local independents around here who did sort of open up round here. One is still going, and they started doing game rentals.
Oh, that's good. They're still going.
They've been 20, 30, certainly nearly 30 years probably. I reckon they've been going now.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to hear that.
But that's it. It had to be more accessible because obviously the games were so expensive.
Yes, yeah, they really were. I think I've got I've got about 10 games on the shelf now. I don't ever remember owning more than 10 back in the day. That was it. But we did get to play a lot more games, and of course you swapped with mates at school and stuff, didn't you as well? That was another resource. So played a lot of games. Yeah, they're some of my favourites. R-Type, absolute classic on the. Really do like the Master System conversion of R-Type. Rampage, another one. Played a lot of that.
Got that one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. My other memory of the Master System is what we used to do when we would get. I'm sitting here telling you about how we, didn't have a lot of games. We had a weird practice. My cousin, and I blame him. 100%, I blame him. The blame is at his door. He would get a new game, and do you know what the first thing he'd do, Russ? Imagine you're a kid and you've just been given a brand new Master System game shining away in its box. Imagine what the first thing he did was, which now makes me cringe.
Write his name on it.
Not as bad as that. He used to rip the hanging tab off. That would be like job one. It would be fold that tab back and forth, and then snap it off. So I just followed suit. I copied. I thought that was the done thing.
Do you know? I never realised how important that was until I started collecting, and then now it's like I wouldn't say it is a thing. I just like okay, if the manual's missing, but the hanger's there, I don't get so annoyed about the manual missing. But the way around is if
so you'd prefer to have the manual missing than the hanging tab missing.
Well, I'll be slightly less annoyed than normal. I'd still be annoyed, but I say okay. Well, at least the hanger's there. But the manual's missing. But it's easier to replace a manual than it is to replace a hanger.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. I think I agree. Yeah, I'd rather have the hanging tab than the manual. It's just one of them strange things. I mean, you do hear some of the tubers talk about when they were kids, they sort of throw their Nintendo cardboard boxes away, and I can understand that to a slightly better extent because it is cardboard and trashed or whatever. But I mean, the only thing I can think of was that he saw these hanging tabs as not part of the game, but just part of the retail. They can hang on the rails and stuff, and really part of the game. But yeah, to look at them now, I mean, it's part of the game box, isn't it? It's the first thing you look for.
It is, and I mean, it is a pain in the backside the way I store my games, and the fact that you can't sort of get them. But the tab doesn't it's not overly flexible. You don't want to flex it too much in case it sort of snaps off.
Yeah, I mean, you get
it's a bit of a pain.
We could get right in the the woods here talking about these, couldn't we? I mean, some of them you get some and it's like they've never been touched. They're not moving. They're rigid. Yeah. Some of them are wobbling about. You put them on a shelf and they're all at different angles. It's just the things we worry about as collectors. But
I know.
I've even gone so far, Russ, actually, just before we stopped pouring everyone to tears talking about hanging tabs. I've even gone so far as to, for nostalgia purposes, I deliberately picked up Sonic 1 without a tab because that's how I had it back in the day.
Oh, I see. So you've gone for the way I remember it, as opposed to sort of.
I did just with Sonic 1, and also I've got a loose copy of Alex Kidd. Sorry, I say a loose copy. I mean physical copy, not built in. Alex Kidd in Miracle World. Now that is a bit more of an expensive title, so buying it not quite complete, so financially driven. But because they were the two big originals. In my brain, it kind of made sense that they didn't have the hanging tabs because none of our games had the hanging tabs back in the day because we ripped them off.
That's strange. I find that really interesting as a collector that you'd sort of buy something but only as you remember it rather than go for the. Yeah,
it's a curiosity that I would do that. Yeah, my mate thinks it's really strange because I've got two without tabs and the rest are all. I will not buy another game without a tab.
The idiosyncrasies, you know what I mean?
Easy for you to say, yeah.
Yeah, I won't try and say that again. Yeah, the pitfalls and manifest. Oh, I'll try. Bloody hell. Yeah, the pain of being a collector. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
I think this is, I think this is part of the fun of collecting, that you have got your idiosyncrasies. Oh, he's pulled it off. You have got your idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
These little things that you can sort of obsess about, and perhaps they don't make sense to anyone else. I mean,
that's it. Yeah.
We don't play these games as much as we'd like, do we? I think most of us, if we're honest. So maybe part of the fun is by these quirks that we have.
That's it. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, I know people still play as much as they collect for, but a lot of people now probably sort of more the other way, so they're going to collect more and play occasionally, which is where I sort of sit in now. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm still there myself. I would like to have, during lockdown, I didn't play a lot. I had a Mega Drive set up, and that was about it. I was dipping in and out of games and stuff, but my head was in. I was getting through a lot of Xbox One games, and if you'd have said to me, you're not going to couple of hours of retro during 4 months of lockdown, I'd have been disappointed. Because if you can't, I've got all that time off, and you're in the house, and if that's not a good time to play some games, then
yeah, you're absolutely right. I had it all planned out in case, obviously, that I thought, well, if I do have time off, then I'll be doing this.
I think that's the other thing about YouTube. I found is that actually sometimes watching a YouTube video, someone who's subscribed to and they're putting content out, is actually more fun than playing half these games, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Well, you get into viewing habits as well, and
you do, yeah.
Especially the amount of content people chucked out during lockdown.
Yes, it was coming thick and fast, wasn't it?
If you've got people, if you've got people who enjoy watching, then a new video 2 or 3 times a week or something like that would sort of fill that hole, wouldn't it?
It would, big time.
So from the Master System, you then moved on.
Yeah, next console was the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, because this will tie in quite nicely when we got into your games shortly.
It will. It will.
Yeah. So how did you end up with the Super Nintendo?
Once again, older cousin. He got it first. I actually remember he knew that he was getting the Super Nintendo because I think it was for Christmas. Obviously, early 90s. He knew in advance he was getting one. So there was a lot of excitement for it. House. He got one for, I believe, Christmas, and what a machine! I mean, no one listening to this needs selling on the Super Nintendo, do they?
No, I must admit I don't know anybody who's got a particular dislike for it.
That's very true. Yeah.
We talk about people will. There's certain things I'll point out. Certain people say I don't like the N64. Some people say I didn't like the GameCube. Some people say I don't like the 360. But you don't hear people say I don't like the Super Nintendo.
You really don't. No. Perhaps they preferred the Mega Drive, but there's not any sort of dislike for the Super Nintendo. I think the only people that don't have a soft spot for the Super Nintendo are those who perhaps it was a bit before their time.
Well, yeah, but it looked different, didn't it? I mean, Sega were very much into their sort of black, weird-looking consoles, but I'm very much in the opinion that the Super Nintendo is a very, very good-looking appliance. It's much better looking than, with the greatest amount of respect to the Americans listening. It's a much, much better looking system than they got over there.
I think so as well.
The grey and purple combination, yeah.
I agree. I mean, as far as the console goes, I much prefer the PAL. I will give them a nod to their controller, though. I shouldn't like it because we had obviously the colours and stuff, but I do like their slightly more basic colour scheme on the control pad.
Yeah, I think you're right there as well. I don't know. I've only seen them actually playing on one, so I'm not sure how they sort of stand up to that.
Did you say you've not played on a?
I've not played on a.
No, I haven't.
Not played on one, but they do look the business.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume that if you were to pick up an NTSC SNES pad, that it would work now.
And the great thing about the SNES pad is so nicely chunky build to it, and those great big buttons on the front. You got the power button, the eject button, the reset button, and there's a cartridge slot, and it was all grey and the same with everything. It just a great looking machine.
It really was, yeah. I mean, the pad was just comfortable, and I think it's still aged well now. I mean, anyone that sits and plays a SNES Mini, I don't see how you can have any complaints about the controller. Really great bit of hardware, and we've obviously not even touched on any of the games yet. But
no, well, I mean, is there anything that sort of stood out for you at the time that you would have played then?
Yeah, it obviously surprised no one that Super Mario World was a massive game. Played that to death. Yeah, it was. It was just. I think he got a few games at once. That was probably one that concentrated a lot of our time. But Mario Kart as well. The original Mario Kart was a big one.
Terrible game.
We used to play. Yeah, I know you're not a Mario Kart fan, are you, Russ?
I mean, I'm not trying to plug my own channel, but I've got a video probably upcoming next week of me playing Mario Kart first time in a very, very long time.
What, the SNES version?
The SNES version. And that game just doesn't like me.
See, I wouldn't say it's the best version of Mario Kart, the original, but do you know, I wouldn't argue against someone that possibly is. I know Pete SNEStastic has spoken a few times about how he thinks it's the best version.
I don't see it myself. Having played it again recently, I don't think it holds up as well.
So what would you say is your issue with it then, Russ? The original,
the original one. It just doesn't like people beating it. It just finds. It's just psychological, mate. I don't know what it is. I have not nightmares of therapy about this game, and I just cannot get on with it.
See, I find that's the if you're talking about sorry to cut across you, but if you're talking about that they don't want you to beat the computer, in my experience, I've found that the SNES version is the least offensive for that. I found that the rubber banding, I think that's the right term that's used.
Yeah.
On the N64 version was probably noticeably worse for me.
I'll say this video. I mean, by the time this goes out, that's probably been a couple of weeks previously. But I'll tell you about it now. I was playing it the other day. Only the first Mushroom Cup 50cc. I forgot it was 5 tracks per cup as opposed to 4 on the later versions. And on the second track, I finished 6th after sort of being annihilated at one point, or I don't know, just didn't go well. And there's one track where I think it was the ghost houses tracks.
The first ghost house, yeah.
Yeah. Where I'm winning the race by a mile, and I've got this on video, so people will be able to see that. And I'm leading the race by a long way, and then for some reason, I just have a complete breakdown and drive off the end of the track, and end up finishing 3rd or 4th or something like that. Yeah. And there's another bit on the next level after that one, I think Bowser's Castle level, where I end up being knocked into the lava by another vehicle. I'm about to make the jump and somebody hits me from behind, and I'm leading the race, and then I end up in the lava.
Yeah.
That ain't me. Okay, the me driving off the edge of the level, the ghost level. Yeah, that's me, but not the other one.
Yeah, it's not a racing game as such, is it? I mean, I was playing Mario Kart 8 last week with my brother. And it makes me yearn to go back and play some of the earlier Mario Karts, because my issue with it now is there's just too much going on. The tracks are overly complex. The items that you pick up and use are just so disruptive now. I found that I think I'd like to see them rein it in a little bit and try and get the balance a little bit perhaps more even, because it's chaos, isn't it? I mean, I say that my brother sort of comes first every time, so it's not completely out of your hands. But
I mean, in terms of Mario Kart, I mean, I prefer the series as it's gone on. So I mean, I've played both Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U and version on the Switch, and I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy playing.
Okay, so you're the other way around then.
Yeah, I didn't like it to start with, but as it's gone on, I appreciate it a bit more. And now it's not a chore to play in Mario Kart. It's something I do enjoy doing.
That's good. I mean, that's what it's all about. Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time on the SNES version, and once again, yeah, it could well be the nostalgia of that's the one I've played the most.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, they were two of the biggies, and obviously the classics, Street Fighter 2. We used to get just the blistered thumbs of Doom that you do as a kid playing games such as that.
I don't know how you managed to get blistered thumbs playing Street Fighter 2 unless you turn the off button on. But there we go.
It's the rolling from bottom to left or right that always did it for me. I'm with blister after a couple of games.
That sounds painful. That does.
Yeah, it was almost like a badge of honour, though. We sort of, we've been playing a lot of Street Fighter and we've been kicking each other's backsides and
Street Fighter thumb.
Yeah,
what they call it,
exactly.
something like that. Yeah.
Outside the box, from this time, there's not many games, unfortunately, that I can say, well, we used to play this and we used to play that perhaps I could offer as a hidden gem. It was all the well-known stuff. And when the newer stuff like Killer Instinct came out, Turtles in Time.
Yes, yeah. No, I had that recently as well.
Oh, good. Video with that as well? Or?
Yeah, there is a video at the moment. Yeah.
Good.
Gives you no idea how up to date you are on my videos.
It does, yeah. A big 3-week backlog for me to work through.
No, it's only gone up this week, so you're not that far behind.
Ah, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it really is just the well-known stuff that took up a lot of our time.
I mean, that sort of leads us on nicely onto your first two games on your desert island.
Yes, it does.
Sort of bring with you. You've already touched on Mario World briefly, which is one of those games. So,
yeah.
Why would that sit on your list? Give us a sort of a brief reason as to why that's there.
Yeah, I'll try and think of something. It's difficult, isn't it? Because we all know Mario World, and what else is there to say about Super Mario World, really? I didn't play much of I only knew one kid who had a NES, a couple of doors up from me. So I had a few.
You were lucky, nobody else did.
Yeah, it's one of those things, it just wasn't common over here, was it?
No.
One lad had a couple of games of the original Mario Brothers, Mario 1. Had a few games of that. I thought it was alright. Never played 2 or 3. So Super Mario World was the first one that I really sort of got immersed in. And you can play it now. It's just not aged. I sit and play it with my other half, and she's better at it than I am. She grew up with older brothers who are my age or older.
Is she into a gaming? Is she?
She is. I'm quite lucky. Yeah, we're both playing Breath of the Wild at the moment. She's playing it on her Wii U, and I'm playing through it podding through it, I should say, on my Switch. So it's a result. Yeah, she's into her games, and we're about 3/4 of a way through a playthrough of Mario World on the SNES Mini, and she's she's a lot better at it than me. And I thought I was a good player, but she's
yeah.
It's just a solid game, isn't it? It's just a really well-made, timeless game, and you tend not to forget. This is what you do at this bit. This is what.
I mean, I will agree on that one. I will sort of say that when my mates first had a Super Nintendo, that they were all interested in playing Street Fighter 2 and all that rubbish. I wanted to play Mario World. Yeah. Purely because that was a sort of game I probably would have enjoyed more.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that was always my preference to have a little dip into that, and even if you just did, a few levels each. Just to have a dip in, but yeah, it's just something about it, isn't it? I think it captured something. The soundtrack, the music was great. All the new characters they'd introduced. So it's a nostalgic game, but I also think it's not just nostalgia that does it a disservice. It's just a brilliant game.
It is. I can't argue with that at all. They always got a very, very good reputation of bringing out a strong game for Mario whenever the new system came out. Mario 64. I know a lot of people don't like Mario Sunshine, but I still think it's a very underrated game. You got Mario Galaxy, and you also got Mario Odyssey now.
It's a funny one, isn't it? It's definitely there. You definitely would say that Mario is the Nintendo flagship.
Yeah, but also I think when you compare him to Sonic as sort of Sega's flagship, Mario has been a lot better looked after in terms of the quality and the consistency of the games.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And Mario World, I think I know a lot of people have a lot of love for Super Mario Brothers 3, but I think Mario World started that sort of cementing in that this is our flagship character. We are going to make sure we protect this character the best way we possibly can do. I know some people will probably say Sunshine was a bit of a drip off, but that's because it wasn't like Mario for enough people.
Right, I've not played Super Mario Sunshine. I think the last Mario game I've played is actually Super Mario 64.
Yeah, but again, that was a great game when it came out as well. And
I did complete that. I enjoyed that. I'm not really a 3D Mario fan. I prefer 2D Mario really, and flip side with Zelda. I'm 3D Zelda, and I don't get on with the 2D Zelda. That's one of those quirks we were talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I did complete Mario 64, and I think there were supposedly 120 stars to collect, but there were a couple more hidden ones, and I do remember getting 2 or 3 of the hidden ones. Really, immersing myself into that game, but I would have no desire to go back and play it now, to be honest.
Oh right, okay.
And I've not liked the look of anything since. I wish I did, and that they appeal to me, because I think essentially the one on the Switch, Odyssey.
Yes, yeah.
Odyssey does look a good game. Maybe I'll give it a go.
I would agree with you on that one. I think it does look a good game. I've not played it. I think the latest one I've got is 3D World on the Wii U, which I played a little bit of. Which is again, I don't mind that game at all. Yeah, I prefer the Mario 3D.
I think what as you alluded to, I think when you do play a Mario game, I think you are assured of a certain level of quality, aren't you? It's not going to be a dud. Whether it's your cup of tea or not.
That's the other side of it, yeah.
Yeah.
But, give it a good try to give it a go.
But no, Super Mario World had to go on. Had to be a desert island game, just because. Just the quality of the game first and foremost, the nostalgia, and also the game that commands a few hours.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Really useful. Sat around a desert island.
Well, that's why when I look at people's lists so far, and that's what I'm sort of hoping they're trying to do. Sort of think, well, not just a game I'm taking that, but obviously a game that you can have a bit of time spending around. I think looking through your list here, that there would certainly be an argument in a lot of those cases. The next one, we're on staying on the SNES. Interesting choice, this one, and I'd like to know your reasoning behind it.
Yeah, so I've chosen NBA Jam.
NBA Jam.
NBA Jam, yeah, on the Super Nintendo.
Now that is not a choice I would have expected to have heard.
No, I suppose out of all the games on the Super Nintendo that I could have mentioned that I was big into, I didn't mention that one because obviously we were going to talk about it as one of my choices.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got into that in a big way. I wasn't really like a massive basketball fan. I didn't really play it at school. I watched a little bit of it we had it on Channel 4, didn't we?
Did we have basketball on Channel 4?
We did. I'm sure it was Channel 4, but we did get some NBA. And obviously it was the 90s, it was the Bulls, it was big colourful team, colourful personalities.
Right.
Rodman, didn't you? And
yeah,
Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen.
Yep.
And so I was kind of not a basketball fan, but I was kind of a little bit interested in the Bulls, a little bit fascinated by the Bulls. Ended up playing, I can't remember how I ended up playing NBA Jam. I didn't play it in the arcade. First time I would have played it would have been on a Super Nintendo, probably round a mate's house. Loved it, got my own copy. Just what I like about it is it's just a very accessible, arcadey sort of game. Basketball, it's very end-to-end. And I enjoy sticking it on and having a couple of games myself. I like playing against a second player. And it's one of the few games on the Super Nintendo that actually supports the
Oh, the multi-tap.
The Super Multi-Tap. It's one
Yeah.
of the few games that you can play 4-player.
I didn't
which
know
I've
that.
not done. Which I've not done, I might add. But yeah, so it's just such an accessible pick. When I think of a pick up and play, if I've got 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I'm going to stick a game on, if everything's set up available to me, it's probably going to be NBA Jam.
So, I mean, obviously, would have been into basketball really would have helped to sort of make that choice for you at the time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I wasn't. As I say, I didn't really play it at school. I, played a little bit in PE. Wasn't a big basketball fan. I think I was just more of a fan of the game. And I, as I say, I watched a little bit on Channel 4. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, really. I was a football fan, but as we'll discuss later on, I'm not really ever been a big fan of football games.
Okay, so yeah, cause I'm just trying to work out where it came from. Because I mean, when I first saw the game, because I'm one of these sort of rare breeds. I don't mind sports games at all. I'm quite happy to play sports games. So when I first saw NBA Jam, I was sort of disappointed because I wanted to see more of like a basketball game.
Yeah, so you wanted to see a full team, I imagine.
Full court press, as they call it, isn't it, I suppose.
Terminology
these in basketball, I think.
Yeah.
So when I'd never played the arcade game, so when I saw it, I thought, well, it looks a bit silly sort of thing, and you got these stupid little power-ups and all that. I thought, well, I don't want to play that sort of game.
Yeah, I think it was over the top, wasn't it? You had the announcer and you had the some of the slam dunks were like very cinematic and over the top.
It doesn't stop me owning a copy of the game on the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo though, because I have both. I have both of those, both boxed as well.
Yeah, okay. I've got a loose copy on the. I bought. So it was one of the first boxed copies for the Super Nintendo that I bought. I had to have a copy of that boxed and complete. Years ago, before I was collecting proper, if you like, I did pick up a loose copy from somewhere for the Mega Drive to see what it's like, and I don't actually really get on with it. I don't know if it's because I control, playing it on the Mega Drive. It's also slightly different. There's some of the music and stuff. There is like a soundtrack like during the match. There isn't on the SNES version.
There's a slight difference between the two versions, which you do find there are sort of some instances, but you're saying from a playable point of view,
it's possibly an identical game. It's just that I'm used to the SNES pad. I'm used to playing the SNES version, and that's I wouldn't really stick the Mega Drive version on. It's just I've got no inclination to play it on the Mega Drive, but it is my go-to 5-10 minute game on the Super Nintendo. So but it's you're asking me what it is about it, and not being a basketball fan. So you've got me thinking as well. Well, what is it about the game that I think I wasn't? I think I was a bit late to. I think the arcade scene was a bit before my time. I do remember playing like a Turtles arcade when I used to go swimming, but I think by the time I was sort of I don't think we didn't have arcades. We didn't have dedicated gaming arcades. They'd already started to turn into like the 2p machine. So I don't think I had a lot of experience playing arcade games. So I'm wondering if I get that arcade experience through a game like. Obviously, it is an arcade game itself.
Yeah.
Not that I've played that, but I think just the accessibility of it, the reward, quite clever how it rewards you. The commentator getting excited and some of the over the top slam dunks.
Yeah.
It is giving you that reward like you get playing the arcade games.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I've got a bit of a weird theory. I don't know how it stands up, but so like the trophy system and the achievements on sort of modern consoles.
Mm-hmm.
I find that they're a bit of they're like a reward, aren't they? They keep you playing a game. Maybe not everyone. Cares for them, but I think a lot of us do enjoy popping those achievements or the trophies. It's a bit of feedback. It's a bit of a reward for doing something in the game. And my theory is that's the modern that is the modern arcade. What we got in the arcades were like bigger, over-the-top visuals and sounds.
Yeah.
And you got that constant reward because they wanted you to keep putting
the money in.
Putting the money in.
I think you nailed it there.
So that's a theory, and I think I get a lot of that reward from NBA Jam. I think it's constantly rewarding me. That's the feeling I get when I play it. That's the only. Now that you've sort of asked me and I've got thinking about it, that's the only explanation I can offer.
But that's the sort of thing that keeps you coming back to it, and that's what you want there. That whole sort of drag back in, isn't it? So
it is. I think it's probably the case with a lot of games. Talked about Street Fighter 2. I think it's probably the same with that. Games where you are sort of rewarded thick and fast, and it keeps coming at you.
Okay, so 2 SNES games there to take with you. Let's go back to your gaming history. You've still got quite a bit to go, so we'll try and get through these here. Obviously, trying to keep an eye on how long we've been chatting for as well. I don't want to sort of gloss over anything too much if we can help it, because obviously it's fascinating to know how you got to this sort of position and what sort of inspired you to keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to sort of pause it and do it over 2 parts or whatever, then.
Well, that's it. I mean, we can always edit it out anyway and do that. It's no problem at all. We'll keep the conversation going for now.
Yeah.
And then if we do sort of decide to split it in a couple of parts, then I'll just do a top and tail in the middle of it anyway. It's no.
Okay. Yeah, brilliant.
All right. So we'll move on to the N64, which is your next one then.
Yep, N64. So
now, this is a machine which seems to divide certain people.
I was about to say exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, mentioning no names, but yeah, go on.
Well, it's been a delight for me to see the likes of Flashback TNT, the other James.
Yes.
Merging on the tubes with his. That's the best N64 collection I think I've ever seen.
I was about to say that I don't think I've seen a better one myself either.
Not just in terms of that he's got the full set, but I didn't realise the extent of how complete all his games are. I think they're all fully complete with all the leaflets and all the bits and bobs you get in them.
It is. I'm no disrespect to James meant at all when I'm saying this, and I hope he doesn't take this the wrong way, but it is depressingly brilliant. You know, it's brilliant that he has got that collection as immaculate and as complete as you would want it. It's also
put together. It's perfect, isn't it? Well, he might disagree. He might say, "Well, there's a couple of boxes that have got a little ding in it." But
yeah,
I mean, you could see his collection in one of those retro magazines, couldn't you? Where they sort of take the artistic photos of.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely spot on there. And when I say depressingly, I mean it's depressing because he's got such a great collection.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah,
we haven't. Yeah.
But no, the N64. Yeah, so the likes of James on the tubes. I've really enjoyed seeing the Nintendo 64 get a little bit more love.
Yeah, it's a console that I again spent a lot of time playing on friends, and although I didn't particularly care for the choice of games they insisted on playing, because there were games on there like Mario 64 that I would have quite happily sat down and played if I'd been given the opportunity to do so, and I've appreciated those games since then. GoldenEye as well. I spent so much time playing GoldenEye on the deathmatch mode that all I really wanted to do was actually have my own N64 and a copy of the game and actually play through single player, which I managed to do about 10 years ago. And I thought, this is a really good game.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, so to play it from that angle was so much better, and I was really pleased that I did do.
For me, it's such a brilliant multiplayer machine. But like you say, there's a lot of really great single player games as well that you're missing out on if you don't get to play them. I mean, just top of my head, the 2 Zeldas, both brilliant games.
Yes, I've got Ocarina, although I must admit I don't get on with Zelda games, but that's just me.
Yeah, they're not everyone's cup of tea, are they? But so you obviously enjoyed Mario 64.
Yep.
Yeah, there's loads of good single player games on there. I can understand why it does divide opinion. I mean, it's some of the graphics don't. I mean, I will admit at the time I thought some of the graphics weren't all that. It was very blocky, wasn't it?
Yes, but then again,
3D.
But then again, that little run of consoles from the Saturn through to the PlayStation 1 to the N64, they all suffer from that at the moment. And I think it's sometimes it's very much an easy argument to use that against the N64. Oh yeah, but the games are terrible nowadays. But PlayStation 1, a lot of those games, I mean, I love the PlayStation 1, don't get me wrong, but a lot of those games look incredibly rough now.
Yeah, they do. I think you know that going in, and you know that they don't fantastic, but do they play well? I think Dainster says it a lot, and I agree 100% with him. For me, it's not about how a game looks, how it plays, and
yeah,
my enjoyment of a game is not based on the visuals.
I mean, I'm just going through some of the games that I've got here just to sort of, chuck out some of these games. Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, I had that.
Diddy Kong Racing. Donkey Kong 64. Extreme G Racing. GoldenEye. Jet Force Gemini. Loyal Wars. From the Star Fox series, which is a brilliant game. Absolutely brilliant game.
Yeah, played that, yeah.
Perfect Dark. Pilot Wings. Got the Quake games, which again I think were pretty good at the time.
Were they N64 specific? Those Quake, were they sort of redesigned for the N64 with their own sort of levels and stuff?
I think they were designed. There's a Quake 64 version, which I'm guessing probably would have been a port of
the original
Quake game, and then Quake 2 came out as well. So that was obviously released for that system, and the same with probably with the other systems as well. I'm not quite sure about that one. The Star Wars games. Not so much Shadows of the Empire, because if you play Shadows of the Empire, the first level is great, the Hoth level, and then it gets a bit ropey after that. But Rogue Squadron's a great game.
Not played it. I don't think I've played. I think I've played Episode 1 Racer.
Yeah,
but other than that, I've not played a Star Wars game.
And of course, it was the N64 was the home of the great wrestling games. Now you're a big wrestling fan like myself.
We'll go down a rabbit hole now.
We could. We'll try.
We'll try not to.
We'll maybe save that conversation for another time because we could quite easily wrap it on about that for ages, couldn't we? But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking the NWO WCW series, the No Mercy WrestleMania 2000.
All I'll say about the wrestling games on the N64, so that we avoid that rabbit hole, is that my same cousin, and myself, we used to get the train and we used to go into town and we'd go into Game Station. And I miss that place because I'm not a fan of game at all, but we used to love going into Game Station. And we brought home, he picked up WWF Warzone, I think it was,
yes, yeah.
And I picked up WCW NWO Revenge. It was the first time either of us had seen these games, or we've not played another wrestling game on the N64. We rush home, we get back to his house, and we load them up and we give them both a try, and we give them 5 or 10 minutes each. And that first evening, our impression was that Warzone was the better of the games, and WCW NWO Revenge was a bit slow and plodding, and graphics weren't all that. Whereas Warzone, it looked better, didn't it? I think at a superficial level, it stood out immediately. It had the music, it had the voices.
Did it have the Titantron introduction in the background? Didn't it have something with the Titantron sort of in the background, but then there was I think the wrestlers walking to the ring wanting, not like the extravagant entrances you get nowadays on the modern games, but I think they were just the graphics in the background, and they sort of like superimposed the.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Warzone or was it, the successor Attitude.
Attitude, yeah. But it's one of those. Anyway.
It rings a bell that there was like a little Titantron, and then you'd have maybe a wrestler would sort of emerge, and you'd see him walk halfway up the aisle, then he'd be out of shot.
That's it, yeah.
But yeah, you had they dubbed in some interviews, didn't they, with all the different with the roster and stuff, which you didn't get that on WCW games. So initially we were playing. Yeah, we decided Warzone was the better of the two, and we played that for a few hours. And it was probably by the end of that evening that we came to realise that actually Warzone was pretty crap. And WCW NWO Revenge, when you look beneath the surface, like that is a meaty wrestling game.
Yeah,
and we never went back, Russ. We never went back and played. Warzone probably got slung in a drawer and gathered dust, and we put hours and hours and hours and hours into.
Because at the time I had a PlayStation 1, so I was sort of stuck with Warzone and Attitude. And I was always hearing about great things about how good No Mercy was, how good WrestleMania 2000 was, how good the WCW NWO games were. So I didn't get to play those till much later.
Fantastic, yeah. I mean, by the time No Mercy came out, they'd really nailed on the formula, added to it. And of course, they had the WWF license, which for the majority of people is the more desirable of the two. But I think for myself, yourself, and myself, I think we're also big WCW fans, aren't we?
That's right, yeah, that's right.
So it was very much my cup of tea, especially that time, the late 90s.
Well, it was a great time to be a wrestling fan, wasn't it? Great late 90s.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, if you watched one and refused to watch the other, then give your head a wobble.
But I don't see, if you had access, as I was lucky enough to have to the cable TV, and we had a Sky Sports subscription, you'd get all the weekly programming. Especially when you'd have Raw on a Friday night. I think it was on at
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock Sky Sports, wasn't it? Yeah. But before that, you'd have Nitro on at 8 o'clock, was it?
I think it was. Did it not start? I seem to remember my Friday nights where I'd work. I was in the sixth form still, and I was working. I was stacking shelves, and I'd race home on a Friday night after stacking shelves. And Cartoon Network would go off the air, and it would become TNT.
Yeah.
And I think, as far as I recall, so we'd get the first hour of Nitro unopposed from 9 till 10, and then Raw would come on Sky, and then you'd be channel hopping.
No, not me. No. What I'd do is because I would record.
Right. So you did the sensible thing.
I record Nitro, and then when Thunder started, that would come on after that as well. You see.
Right.
And then what I would then do is I would then tape. So I tape those, and then I would also then tape the late Raw replay, which is probably on about 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So if I could remember to do that, or I don't know how I got around it, but I managed to sort of squeeze in about 8 hours a week at that point. Because when then SmackDown started, and that went.
I wish I'd done the same, to be honest, but I think I was too. I don't know, it was like instant gratification. I just couldn't stop myself. I mean, and when you look back now, there's a lot of crap from that time. And you knew when something was happening on one channel that was skippable. A little bit of instant gratification. I wish I'd done it your way, but believe me, I've watched it all. I've caught up on all the stuff I've missed since.
Yeah. Oh well, that's it. I'm still working my way through some of it because a lot of the stuff I sort of split around, and I started watching Nitro from the start, and I got about halfway through 1996, and then I gave up a bit. And,
just when it was getting good.
Yeah, I know, but I've seen that a bit, sort of after that for a long time. I think. Let's be trying to remember. I think we started getting TNT around about the time of the Bash of the Beach '96, anyway.
Perfect timing.
Nitro started going on to TNT when it was still an hour-long show, or a 2-hour show or something. I can't remember.
I think it became a 2-hour show on the very show that Scott Hall showed up, because didn't he show up at the start of hour 2?
Yes, he did. I think
it was the first episode of the 2-hour format.
Yeah, you might be right there. But, so I just remember sort of going out before one Friday night and put TNT on, and then they were sort of recapping Bash of the Beach. I thought, oh, right. So.
Brilliant.
So, it was a great time to do all that stuff.
It really was. And the games on the N64, for me, they are the definitive.
The pinnacle of it, yeah.
Pinnacle of the gaming. I mean, to get away from wrestling, I mean, you've mentioned GoldenEye. Absolute classic GoldenEye was. I remember there was. Do you remember some of the things you used to have to do to unlock? I say things because it's been so long that I can't remember what.
Which we took the paintball cheats and the things like that. Yeah. That's what everybody remembers.
On the sound a bit crass, but the toilet level. I can't remember what it's called, but everyone calls it the toilet level.
The toilet level.
Where you start up in the toilets.
Yeah.
You had, I believe, to unlock something, you had to complete that in 2 minutes and 5 seconds. And I didn't know anyone that could do it. Of all the people that I knew that owned an N64, like, none of us could unlock that cheat. Often we'd have everyone would have locked everything else other than that one cheat. what it later turned out, it was dependent on you had to get a key card from a doctor. He didn't always appear in the same area of the map level. Sorry, so if he got to the point to get the card off him and he wasn't there, you had to just start again because it's not going to work unless he's at a certain point. But a lad at sixth form in the year above me, my cousin told me that he can do the cheat, and my cousin had passed on the cartridge, his own cartridge, for him to unlock cheat for him. And as it turned out, it ended up with probably half a dozen of us boys bringing our cartridges into school over the course of like a couple of months and giving them to this lad called Ben, and he'd sort of take it home for a couple of nights, and then he'd bring it back to school for you, and it's all unlocked.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's one of those things, but I didn't know anyone else that could unlock that. I'll have to ask James, if he's done that.
I've never heard of anybody doing that before, actually bringing games in for somebody to unlock the certain cheat. Because
I would be ashamed of it, Russ, but it's charming, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a great story. It really is. It really is a great story. So, the N64 as well, first machine that actually had the 4 ports on the front for 4 different controllers. I know you can get a tap for the PlayStation 1, and we mentioned the Super Nintendo and what have you, but it was there. It was designed for multiplayer gaming. That's why a lot of people of our generation collecting now have so fond memories of it. Which probably some people can't quite understand because of how some of the games look, but that's how it was back then, and I think it's an unfair thing to tar that machine with. I think it's a much better appliance than some people give it credit for. You've got the expansion pack front for it as well, so some of the games would require the expansion pack, like Donkey Kong 64 and Perfect Dark. You've also got obviously the world's worst joypad controller, but also the facility to add a rumble pack to it.
Yeah, I remember at the time I thought that the control pad was the best control pad that I'd ever played a game on.
You're a very strange man.
Well, yeah. When I pick one up now, it's almost unplayable. I think they look great, but I don't know. I think maybe modern pads, I think maybe they don't look so good in retrospect, but then that argument is undone because I said at the start of our chat that I still think that the SNES pad holds up. Modern pads have left it in the dust a little bit. But I think my problem with the 64, other than not having 2 analog sticks, is it just feels a little bit light, and there's not a lot of weight to it. And I can understand why some people aren't. It hasn't aged well for some people.
I'm just holding one now, and I've never really got on with it at all.
So what's your when you pick it up? Do you agree? Do you agree with me? It feels a little bit light and a little bit flimsy, maybe.
It's light. I will give it that. I've got 2. I've actually got an official one. I've got a third-party one. But yeah, it does feel a bit, light and flimsy, and
one of the charm sort of
too many buttons.
Yeah, well, the analog stick tends to wear out quite quickly on those, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've picked a couple up, but the past where the analog stick is pretty much screwed. Weren't the most reliable things.
No, they tend to become very sort of scratchy.
But it's the whole point of having that stick there in the first place. Like, what's that there for? Why is that going to be any better? I'm used to using the D-pad. Obviously, because when I first had the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 1 was there purely. Whoops! I just dropped that on the floor. Was purely there with. I had one of the original standard controllers with it, so I didn't get a dual shock till a bit later on. And then obviously you've got the analog sticks and the dual shock. So when I first started playing N64, I said, "What the heck's this stick in the middle of it for? It? What's the purpose of this, other than to annoy me?"
Right.
Nintendo, you've done it again. Yeah.
No, it's not aged well. I must admit, I am keen on one of those. Have you seen those sort of newer releases for the Nintendo? I think they're called Brawler 64.
No, I haven't. No.
They do look the business. I'm gonna have a one of those. I think at some point.
Okay.
Because I think they're more shaped like they are more modern shaped.
They might be a bit easier to use.
They might, yeah. One of the good things about the N64 controllers that some of my mates tended to do was swap the two halves out, so you had like a red and blue controller and and then the different variations. Not much consolation if you don't get on with the controller.
Not really. You know, it's other than completely redesigning it and give it a completely different look. But yeah. But again, the other thing as you mentioned there, colour, which we obviously haven't discussed briefly. We have to move on with other stuff. But I will sort of say that console came out in like the Game Boy came with different colours. I mean, I've got different coloured Game Boys, yellows and greens and blue and what have you. The N64 came out in a wonderful range of colours.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
It's fantastic.
Funny now I think about it. Now you mention it, it's probably that's probably a bit of genius on Nintendo's part to make them sort of all the different colours and make them collectible and make you want to go out and buy all the different ones.
Well, the Pokemon one, which I bought a password at a car boot years ago for £10, I think it was.
Oh, it's a good purchase.
Yeah, of course now it's worth a lot more than that. It wasn't boxed, it was just loose. But I thought, well, I don't really like Pokemon, so I'm not going to go and buy it.
Yeah, Pokemon was a bit after my time as well. I never really got on with it either.
Yeah, but of course I didn't realise again until years later how much they were actually sort of going for. I thought, oh, nice one.
Yeah, but I'm certainly glad you picked that up. But yeah, I mean, just to put a bow on the N64, because I know you wanted to move on. I think it is. When I think of multiplayer systems, we did allude that there are good single-player games on there, but I do regard it as a system of choice.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it's what me and my mates used to play all the time. We just hammered so many of the classic.
Having the memories out of that into it and
loads. Yeah. So we just hammered all the classic multiplayers, and there's a certain group of mates that I still see now a few times a year. We'll go out and have a night out and stuff and back to someone's house afterwards. It's not uncommon that the N64 comes out and we play some of these old games.
You see, that's a great thing as well, because I think most of my friends now were more into games than me. I think there's probably only one guy I know now, I know games when he can. Most of them now don't sort of get involved in it. Happy to sit down and talk about it, but they don't want to talk too much about it, if you know what I mean.
Right, yeah, there's only so much, yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm going out and having a drink with them or whatever, or when you're able to go and have a drink, you know, the inevitable conversation when someone asks me about it, have you seen this game, or do you remember this? I'll talk about it for 5 minutes or so, and they can see I'm getting interested, and they move on. It's like, okay, that's fine.
Or you're talking to them, and you start to notice they get a little bit of a glazed look in their eyes.
Yeah, I get that quite a lot in normal everyday life anyway. It doesn't make any difference to talk about games or work.
Me too, Russ.
Yeah. Right, so leave the N64 for that, but obviously a machine which certainly.
Absolute classic.
Gives you some real memories on that one. We'll move on to your next one.
Yes.
And this is one I wanted at the time, but I didn't get until much later. And it's now sort of one of those consoles which is so easy to collect for. It's very easy. We mentioned rabbit holes earlier. If we didn't edit that bit out, I don't know. We'll have to see how we get on. But
wrestling.
Yeah, wrestling.
Just in case you do, we talked wrestling.
We talked wrestling for about 4 hours. Yeah, in between doing this. But this console is so easy to collect for, and it's so easy to get so many games so quickly because they're so cheap.
Yes. Yeah,
and it is.
It's the PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2. The
PS2.
behemoth that is the PlayStation 2.
I've got the majority of the sort of original collection I had for the PS2 still. Added from charity shops and that. So I've kept, for what I had. But that was a time when I was trading them back and forth a lot. So you'd play one, trade it. It was the same with the N64. Play one, trade it. Play one, trade it.
Yeah.
But there were some games for the PlayStation 2 that. So I didn't have the PlayStation 1. So the PlayStation 2 was my first Sony console. I've got mixed. I'm a mixed bag on the PS2. I think it's fair to say I've got. Yeah, I don't really know where I stand with it. I mean, I'm saying about the core the core games that I've got that I would never move on, and they're mostly Rockstar games. I've got the
Grand Theft Autos and stuff, yeah.
The GTA's, I've got Manhunt 1 and 2.
Oh, I've got Manhunt 2, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you've not played the first Manhunt?
No.
Okay, so that is probably... I mean, it's not aged particularly well. It's a bit slow and plodding now, but it's one of my favourite games. So outrageous to sit and play a game like that. They toned it down a little bit, I think, to be able to get Manhunt 2 out. But the first one's just so outrageous.
Well, because Manhunt 2 came out on the Wii as well.
Yes, it did, yeah.
Kids console, and it's out on the Wii.
I know, yeah, with all the motions and... But, a bit of a mixed bag with PS2. I don't know if it... I got through maybe 2 or 3 of them where the lenses would knacker themselves out. I know that, obviously... could you use DVD on the PS2? I think you could.
Yes, you could do. You had to have the remote control for it.
Yeah.
Same with the Xbox.
So, I mean, admittedly, I was probably using it a lot for DVDs and stuff. But I did get through several systems, and maybe unfairly, I perceived them as being perhaps not the most robust consoles. Whether I would collect for it now is looking at them, and I've got quite a small library of games, and started talking about the PS2's how collectible it is, and you are right. And probably, I don't know if prices are starting to move up a little bit now. I mean, I'm sure that point in time will come.
I've always found the PlayStation 2 to be pretty consistent with its pricing. There's a lot of cheap games for it. Speaking from experience. But there are also some games which sort of hold their value and indeed do increase in value. A lot of the collections, say the Taito collection, Sega collections for it, they sort of tend to sort of hold their prices. There are some games which do appreciate even more as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen titles on eBay. Quite. What about? I mean, I suppose a lot of the. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine a lot of the sort of more obscure Japanese RPGs would be fetching a bit of a price now.
Oh yes, they are. Yeah. I mean, you know, Sean and Retro Game Revive. This is it. You know, he's obviously trying to get a full collection, and some of those games are incredibly expensive.
Good luck to him. Yeah.
I know. But then again, you know, when you got a collection that big, and I think he's on about 800 and something, he's still probably got about 800, 1200 to go. I'm pretty sure it's like 2000.
It's one of the strong points of the console, isn't it? Just so many games for it.
And it is probably now still as cheap to collect for it as it would have been sort of 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Not many consoles you can say about that.
No, that's right. Strange one. I mean, as I say, I've got such a mixed... I mean, it was my console of the generation at the time, and I hammered it, played a lot of games, and enjoyed the console, but I can't put my finger on sort of my take on it now. What's led me to... I'm just a little bit cold on the system now. I don't know if it could be a combination of a lot of things, I guess. Like spines. Going to a shop and just you're swamped with just endless FIFA and sports titles.
You can go into any sort of second-hand shop, charity shop, whatever sort of shop, and you're going to find they've got PlayStation 2 games. Might not be the ones that you want. Quite right in saying it's got FIFA.
I'd put money that you're going to find PlayStation 2 games when you go into a charity shop. So frequently there, aren't they?
Yeah, and because there were so many of them. But again, there's no sign of that sort of supply drying up. They are just there, and because to an extent with the PlayStation 3 early models, you've got a backwards compatibility there as well.
Yeah,
still holding on, but
I I would assume. Please do correct me if I'm wrong. That at the time, the PlayStation 2 would have been the biggest would that have been the biggest selling console of the time?
Yeah, it would have been.
I just imagine that these games are just mass produced.
Well, some
There's so many of them floating about.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they would have been printed. A lot of there are a few which you would have got limited runs on, or sort of towards the end of it, or games where they didn't sell particularly well, and that's why obviously you got the higher value ones. But yes, yeah.
So what's your take on the PS2? Because as I say, I've got mixed feelings about it. It's not something that I want to collect for. There might be the odd game that I want back in the collection. But I do get the impression sometimes if I'd gone a different route and got the original Xbox, which I never had at the time, I might be talking about that now, and I might be talking about it a bit more fondly, perhaps.
I mean, my take on it is I didn't get one at the time. I didn't get one until probably about 2005, 2006, probably. I had an Xbox. I prefer the Xbox. I would take the Xbox over the PlayStation 2. I know the Xbox has got a considerably smaller library, not many exclusives, anything like that.
Yeah.
But I prefer that machine over the PlayStation 2. I don't mind the PlayStation 2. I think it's got. If anybody who's listening to this who wants to sort of collect for an old machine, wondering where to start, you can do a lot worse than this one. They're relatively common to pick up, and like I said, they shed loads of games for it.
Yeah,
from that point of view, there, you're thinking, yeah, I'd go with it. I'm like you. I was excited to get one, but after I sort of used it for a bit, I thought, well, it's not really doing anything else the Xbox didn't do or wasn't doing, so it's just got more games for it.
Yeah. It's a strange one. I mean, I never owned the PlayStation 1 back in the day. Most of my mates had PlayStation 1, but I was one that had an N64. But I've got a weird nostalgia for the PlayStation 1. It's just another one of those quirks of collecting. I've got more PlayStation 1 titles now than I have N64.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm working I didn't play them back in the day. I've just got this nostalgia from somewhere.
And the thing is, I had a PlayStation 1, so I was thrilled to get a PlayStation 2, but I probably, like you, I prefer the PlayStation 1. I think I just like that machine more.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
It's a funny one, really, because I mean, you're probably the first person I've spoken to who sort of owned a console, part of their game history, and said, you know what, I don't really like it.
I know, yeah. I think it's just a case it's not aged well for me. And it's a strange one because, as I say, it was my system of that generation, and I was a big gamer and I played it a lot. And mates had them, and I played games with my mates as well. I did eventually get into the SmackDown series of PS2. Here Comes the Pain.
Yep, I mean that was a good series of games.
And that was a tough sell for me because as far as I was concerned, N64 all the way for your wrestling games, but. Eventually, I did come around to SmackDown series, and so yeah, it's not as if the PS2 sat gathering dust. It's just that I don't have a great deal of sort of warmth for it now.
Yeah,
when I think about it, it's a very, very mixed bag. I keep using the term, but I can't find another way to describe it. I think it's a very mixed bag.
It's also probably one of those. I mean, the PlayStation 1 probably would have been more prominent for that. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of tap that came out the PlayStation 1.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because the PlayStation 2 library is so big, there is a fair amount of tap came out for that. I should know. I got most of it. I've got most of it. Yeah, I am. I look now and I can see 3 or 4 titles that are obviously complete tap. So, yeah, I think it also suffered that although you've got a big library of games, you're going to have to search through a lot of the games you don't know about to find out if you're trying to sort of focus your collection on collecting what you want to collect for, or good games. You won't want to be adding things like Smarty's Meltdown into it.
I certainly wouldn't know. That would overwhelm me if I was trying to track down.
No matter how much I would give you, you would not be wanting to add that game to your collection.
But yeah, I mean, on the plus side, the only plus side to that is yeah, if you go out in the wild and you go to the car boots and stuff, you are going to find them.
Oh,
so you'll get your rewards that way. As you said, if someone wanted an easy console to collect for, I can't think of a better one.
I mean, again, from that point of view, you could walk into a CEX, you can take 20 quid in there, you could come out of CEX having spent your 20 quid and probably got at least 20 to 30 games.
You could. Actually, Let me just... I did buy a game last time I was in CEX before lockdown, actually.
Ah, yeah.
And it's a game that gets mixed reviews. I think Pete Sensitastic has talked about this in a video of his over the last 6 months. But I wanted to just finish on the PS2 on a higher note because I've kind of not been too kind to the system. But I wanted a copy of 24 the game.
Ah, I thought you were going to mention that when you mentioned Sensitastic.
Yeah, 24 the game because I enjoyed the TV series for what it was.
Same,
I thought, do you know what? I think I've got the Shield on PS2, which is also based on TV series, one of my favourites.
Was there a game about the Shield? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I've got it in my hand here. Vic Mackey on the front. Never played it. I thought, you know what, I'll grab 24 if I see it out and about. I'm not going to eBay it, but if I see it in Game Station, I will pick it up. In CEX, sorry.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I found it in CEX. It is absolutely mint. I mean, if we were on video, I'll do a retro Dave and show you in the light. It looks like the manual and all the leaflets have never been touched. Absolutely immaculate game, and it's even got that. The plastic even feels new. It feels like it's not long been out of the wrap.
That's great.
50p.
Yeah.
50p.
When I saw Pete's video and he'd mentioned that, I actually had written my list out to do my video, and I thought, I'll just watch this and say, oh bloody hell, he's picked that game.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think 2 or 3 in that video he picked. I thought, well, I can't go and do this now, and I did anyway. But I told him first. I said, oh, well done for picking 24 the game. That's one of my list as well. I've got the steelbook of that.
Oh, nice.
You don't see the steelbook very much.
Don't? No, I didn't know it existed.
But the good news is the steelbook costs exactly the same as the normal version. So
right,
if you do see when anyone tries to set it more than 50p, you're making a bit of a mistake on that. But yeah, it is a good game. But there are good games like that. Don't sometimes judge the price on what the game may be, but you probably need to do a bit of research and avoid some of the real tat that is out in that system. So
yeah, for sure,
a fair system, but it's got some crap on it. To be honest with you,
some people swear by it, and others
swear at it. Yeah.
Especially when those lenses kept breaking.
Oh yeah, common problem. But again, relatively easy, cheap to pick up.
Well, yes, definitely.
One which isn't, and always hasn't been, is Nintendo's next machine after the N64.
Yeah, that's right, and this one we won't have to spend talking quite so long about, because we're talking about the GameCube, aren't we?
We are talking about the GameCube,
and as I say, I've got a bit of a backlog of videos to catch up on, but I do recall someone saying something very similar to my experience with the GameCube recently, and it's that they had it, and maybe had 2 or 3 games for it and had a little go of it, and then it got sort of put back in the box and slung up in the loft. That is exactly the same experience I had with it.
I'm afraid to say, yes, that my story was very much the same. Waiting for stuff to come out for it, being distinctly underwhelmed by it, and then being shoved in the bag and traded in for an Xbox. Yeah.
I bet that's the case for a lot of people. The plus side of that is that I've still got my original cube, because as I say, it got slung up in the loft. So I was happy to, a few years ago, sort of fish that back downstairs and start buying a few titles for it. But I don't know if it was the timing of when it came out, and I'm not very good with dates, but I imagine that came out at a time when I was just immersed in the previously maligned PS2. So it didn't really get much of a look in.
I think your story is going to be typical for quite a few people.
Yeah, I can imagine so, yeah. Because am I right about that, perhaps, then? Just the timing of it coming out was a little bit odd.
I think did it come out before... I can't. I'm not a historian on these sort of things. I can't remember when it came out before or after the Xbox.
I've got a feeling it may have been after, and
because
I could be completely wrong. But my impression of it that it came out at a time when the PS2 and possibly the Xbox was just already so established.
Because the issue obviously it had, beyond playing games on it, that was it. It couldn't do anything else. It couldn't play your audio CDs. It couldn't play DVDs like the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 could. So from that point of view, for me, I thought, well, I don't really want it to do that because I already got a DVD player. So for me, the GameCube was, I'll get that rather than buy one of those. I'll get one of those instead. And I never had a Nintendo console up until that point in my life.
Oh, okay. So that was your first Nintendo console?
My first Nintendo console, yeah. But I just remember, first day we got Super Monkey Ball, which is a great game, and Star Wars Rogue.
The one with the long title?
That's the one.
Yeah, I've heard that's a good game, that, yeah.
It is
Star Wars Rogue
Leader,
Rogue Squadron 2.
There were two Star Wars games. It's one with the X-wing on the front. Okay. I think the other one's got the AT-AT on. But yeah, I can never remember the title of the game. But I mean, yeah, fantastic game. Absolutely blew you away.
That's one on my wish list, but not a game I played because I probably played at the time of owning it maybe 3 or 4 games on the Cube. That was it. I had such a limited experience. I had Zelda Twilight Princess, which I got all the way to the end of that, up to the final boss, and for some reason at that point decided to stop playing it. Which was the same. It was the same deal on Majora's Mask on the 64. Actually, got all the way to the end, last boss to do, and for some reason decided that's a good point to stop.